Welcome back to Interpreting the Scares! That's right, we're back at it, traveling along the journey of nightmares, this time with a paranormal New Zealand horror comedy that might as well be called Haunted House Arrest, and while it's another film that I've never seen before, I believe that I have seen a poster or two for it floating around for the last couple of years. It's a little film called Housebound. Housebound follows Kylie, a young woman who, after attempting and failing to rob an ATM, is put on house arrest with her mother. When she starts hearing strange sounds in the house, and when her mother claims that the house is known to be haunted, she starts to believe it. With the help of an officer who also believes in the paranormal, Kylie attempts to research the history of the house and all its secrets. You know what? I'll say it. This year's Interpreting the Scares event is shaping up to be the best yet, because even though none of these horror films are the best that I've ever seen, they are unique. Each and every single one. Same goes for Housebound. Again, I can't immediately say that it's my favorite horror movie or anything because it's not, but it is unique. It stands out for doing something that you think is going to be typical, and then it kind of does a 180 and does something else entirely, and a big part of why is due to its balance between horror and comedy. A lot of horror comedies that you see nowadays are silly humor, maybe tongue-in-cheek or meta, but that's not the kind of humor in Housebound. This is much more dry, it's much more deadpan serious, but at the same time kind of silly. For instance, the very first moment that Kylie hears something strange in the house that kind of sounds like a ghost maybe, it's actually a genuinely creepy scene. The way that it's shot, the way that it's edited, how it sounds, it's all enough to get you tense. But it also occurs when Kylie is peeing, so she'll be sitting there, you'll hear a constant stream, and then she'll pause that stream to listen for those weird sounds. And when she doesn't hear anything, she continues to pee, and then she pauses it again because she keeps hearing things, and it's just this thing on and off, on and off, on and off. It's weird because it genuinely is creepy, but it's also kind of hilarious at the same time, but only now and then, not constant. It's also kind of honest if you think about it, because if you wound up in an actual haunted house, I doubt the ghost would leave you alone in order to go to the bathroom. So it kind of makes sense, but it's kind of hysterical all at the same time. I would say, however, that this movie is like 85% serious and all about horror, but every now and then it does have these subtle moments of deadpan seriousness, but ridiculous moments that I loved, and I found that the balance there to be insanely unique. Story-wise, again, you think that it's going to be one thing, it turns into something else entirely, but I was there for it all. The third act alone is just full of twists and turns, most of which I didn't see coming. It's not bad at all, actually. New Zealand might actually have a bit of a winner here in terms of horror. I can't exactly say that I've seen a million New Zealand movies in general, but this is solid. There's a few shots in the film that I think were actually expertly planned out. I don't want to give too much away, but sometimes when you watch horror films, there's a moment where you're waiting for something to happen because you know something's gonna happen, but you didn't realize that it already did. Something's, lurking in the background or something that you didn't see right away. And then it takes you a second before you're like, oh, holy crap, Your brain connects the dots, and it really gets spooked out. So much so that you kind of have to rewind and watch the scene again to see when that thing actually showed up for real. I've seen this like a handful of times in horror, that's it. But every time I have had to rewind it to see it again. And the same goes here. Housebound managed to pull that off, and I cannot not praise it for that. Do I have any negatives for this film? Not a ton. I would say that maybe accents that get a little thick at times, and in general, I have a hard time always listening to the New Zealand accent and picturing serious or scary or whatever, just because accents like in New Zealand or in Australia, they're often regarded as funny accents, at least here. Thankfully, because this was both horror and comedy, it kind of works at the same time. Anyways, let's go ahead and break down my final score for a second. From a technical, unbiased perspective, I thought that this film in general was pretty clever and unique in the direction that it took, especially in kind of convincing the audience that it's going to be one thing, but it kind of turns into another altogether. I thought that that was smart, and I thought that the sense of humor in this film was one of a kind, and I really appreciated how it blended with the horror. Again, it's not a crazy horror film that amazes you in terms of cinematography, visuals, or anything like that, but rather in concept, and sometimes writing, this score is a decent 74%. As for how I personally felt about the movie or my bias score, this is a little bit higher because I definitely think that it's a fun, unique horror film that I wouldn't mind rewatching at some point. Again, not exactly my favorite horror film, but I'm glad that I did check it out. This score is 78%, meaning that when we combine those two scores together, we wind up with a final rating of 76%, 76 out of 100 possible stars, or a letter grade of B. This means, for this year's Interpreting the Scares event, we've had movies scored at 74, 75, and now 76%. Behind the Mask was an outlier here because that scored a little bit lower, but everything else has been pretty consistent in getting better and better and better. We will see where we end up at the end of the month, though. Guys, have you seen Housebound? If so, I want to hear your thoughts about it in the comment section down below. And as for YouTube, you guys know what to do. Hit that like, that subscribe button, and the bell to be notified when I come out with my next review. Till then, peace out.